Well, we talk a lot about things that might need some homework here. So there'll be URLs in the show notes of this podcast that you can follow to pull up the score sheet that we're talking about, and also pull up the music tracks. So that way you can go explore that on your own and be able to use this as a reference as you go if you prefer to learn that way. And I think, the way you kind of went through it and some of the conversation around that, I think it's helped me immensely to understand. I've read the rules, I've gone through it, everything else, and I'm pretty accustomed to how rules are written. But it's been had this conversation with you has probably helped me more than anything else before. So I appreciate that, and I hope it does the same for others. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Welcome to the SQology podcast. Many thanks to Resonix Sound Solutions for making this podcast a reality. There's a link in the show notes, but you can find out more about Resonix sound treatments, along with tons of other info, resources, and products at resonixsoundsolutions.com. Welcome to the show. We have today Howard Cantor. Hello. How do you say your last name?
Cantor.
Okay, Cantor. Okay,
yeah.
And then the organization. What is the what is the official? Is it MASQ? Is it MASQ? Is it MASQ? Is it MASQ?
MASQ.
MASQ. Okay.
MASQ. Just
right.
MASQ. Yeah.
MASQ. Okay. All right. Because everybody kind of has their different spin on that.
They do.
Which is fine, right? I mean, it's not so bad.
As long as you remember it, I really don't care how.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny because Howard and I think Howard's actually been in this a little bit longer than I have, but we kind of weaved in and out around each other. Like I came in while he was out, and then I was out and he came in, and then it seems like around the same time when SQology kind of got started and doing the group formats with the Mecca and MASQ and everything. Howard, you guys kind of were doing RRS, the Red River Shootout, around the same time. We kind of started around the same time doing a very similar thing in our own way, but we had no communication really then. We were just kind of doing our thing. You were doing it locally there in Oklahoma, Texas, right?
Yep, Dallas and Oklahoma City, back and forth.
Yeah, and I think we were even using a similar HubSpot in Dallas of Soundscape Car Audio back then. Yeah. Yep. MASQ came around, around 2018, I guess?
17,
okay.
2017,
Yeah. Like, quick history here. But, yeah, I mean, around that time, we were doing a very similar thing. I kind of went more hard down the just event promoter side. And then, obviously, Howard Robert McIntosh is cohort in this. What's your guys' titles in this?
I don't think that we really have titles.
Okay.
We both kind of own it equally.
Co-founders?
Yeah, co-founders.
All right.
We both share the business equally. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the MASQ started growing, more as an organization. We still we weren't really working together that much as far as, I think we made an announcement. There was a lot going on in both of our lives at the time, but, kind of made an announcement that SQology was going to add MASQ on as a integrated part into it along with Mecca and IASCA, and then 2020 happened.
Yeah.
And we never really were able to execute on any of that. But then in 2021, when the Lone Star Shootout came around with our mutual friend Dan Merritt, MASQ got added on as a format there, which, everybody who participated was doing everything. So everybody got exposed to it, which was cool. Kind of same thing, ironically, with Emma at the same time. And, that's when we chaotically pissed everybody off with install, and that was a chaotic show, man. That was just
crazy.
When Dan and I first started talking about that, and I'm sure you and Dan were talking about the same, I'm sure we were all talking to the same people at the same time. But I mean, at least from my perspective, when we first started talking about that, it was like, well, probably get 20 people. We'll hope for 30, and we can do all these things and try all these things and whatever else. And we put all the things into it. And then we went from 20 to 30 people to 70 to 80 people or competitors. And then it was like, well, we probably should rethink some things there.
Yeah, that parking lot was not big enough, right. And it was a Lowe's parking lot.
Yeah,
it was kind of crazy. Yeah.
We had like people coming out trying to find their landscaping among the cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was pallets of mulch. People were parking around and gravel, and it was. We literally took over about half of the Lowe's parking lot that weekend.
Yeah, it was pretty phenomenal. But it was a fantastic event at the end. Whether you loved it or hated it, it was still, it had that old school car audio feeling to it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun and cool. But then, yeah, I think the later that same year, then I think Howard and I were probably working in our own ways and our own paths to add both, you know, him adding MASQ to the unified finals and me adding Emma to the unified finals. Mm-hmm. And then I never showed up at the unified finals that year. And that's when Tom kind of, I don't think he willingly did it, but he kind of did it.
Somebody's got to.
Yeah.
But now, all I have to say, you went from, you know, the Red River Shootouts, doing local events, promoting stuff. I know back in the day, you and Mick Wallace used to do events in the Northeast, right?
Yeah, we did. We would do about 15 shows a year between Baltimore and Pennsylvania, New York, everywhere in between, Virginia. Yeah,
that's very cool. So yeah, to see it grow from, you know, being at that local event level to then now, I mean, you're on what, your third joining at unified finals, right?
Yeah, we just had our third finals. We had our largest finals. It's grown for us every year, which has been amazing. I think I counted between finals and the kickoff, King of the Hill 2-seat, we had 82 score sheets, 82 entries between both. Yeah, I mean, it was amazing.
No, that's really cool.
Couldn't be happier.
And I would say MASQ, from my perspective, for example, you know, this year I had it, both the Aggieland and SVR had it open for, you know, kind of a free for all in the orgs. It wasn't required to do an org. It wasn't required not to do an org. And I mean, I would say MASQ, as far as that goes, was definitely the seemed to be the easiest trigger as far as, you know, the competitors, what they were choosing to do. And I mean, it definitely seems to be a crowd favorite. That's awesome. And I mean, I think the score sheet is, you know, super detailed. It approaches things from a different viewpoint than the other orgs, and I think that, you know, obviously that's good, that's needed. I mean, as long as everybody understands that that's, you know, going to be it's going to be a different viewpoint. But there's another spectrum of you know, feedback that people can get from that I think, especially at the local event level, is extremely critical, because you can just use that score sheet. And with enough time with the competitor, you know, and the judge working together on it, you can really kind of dive into that and give the competitor a lot of good feedback. But the class structure is mostly complexity based, right?
It's install based.
Yeah,
we've actually scaled back the amount of classes we've had over the years. I think we started with 6. We found that 4 is probably a good number. It makes the classes bigger, which leads to more competition.
Yeah, you definitely have a solid level of competition, especially at the larger events. You know, everybody going, well, you know, I only compete against 2 people, which some people are just fine with coming up and kissing their trophies in front of everybody. And look what I did. Well, you beat one other person. Or look what I did. They're, you know, holding their second place trophy. And it's like, well, you were 2 of 2. So is it really But, you know, it seems like, at least the events that I've done, that I've done myself with MASQ, you know, it's pretty easy to have 10, 12, 15, 20 people in a class.
Yeah.
And
it's all by design.
Yeah. And that's exciting. And you don't end up with like 1 or 2 classes that are just completely vacant because they're made for, you know, 3 people.
Right.
You have a real solid level of competition for everybody, and that's cool. But let's back up a second first. When did you I know so if you go back, there's an episode called Sausage Factory, which was pretty much terribly executed by all of us, so I apologize if you ever listened to that. But I saw, rather than me saying go and listen to that, I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, let's redo some of this. And Howard, when did you kind of first get into car audio and audio in general, and what got you interested in this crazy thing?
So I got my first car when I turned 16. I grew up in Florida. At the age of 16, your birthday, you could get your driver's license. And I got my driver's license on my birthday, and 4 days later, I went and bought my first car, and it had an AM radio and a 4x6 speaker in the middle of the dash. It was a 1979 Honda Civic 1600 4-speed manual transmission. It was the color of dirt, and the interior was plastic brown plaid.
Color of dirt.
It was like sand. It was this funky, I think they call it concrete now, or cement or whatever.
Right.
They're bringing it back, but it was just this flat khaki-ish color with a plastic brown plaid interior. It was horrible, but I wanted to be able to play a tape in it. This is, 1987. So right. I wanted to be able to play my, my tapes and have music. So I bought an underdash tape deck and put a pair of, I think they were Pioneer 4x10 or like Clarion or acoustic 4x10 boxes in the back. Mm-hmm. And the tape deck had a power booster built into it with a graphic EQ. And that's where it all started for me back then. And I just kind of never really stopped, being in Fort Lauderdale in the 80s and 90s. There was a car show every weekend, whether it was at a Sound Advice. I competed in that series. We had a series at a place called Calico Jacks or CJ's. That was every Friday night, and it was a car show and a stereo show, and I competed in those in the late 80s. And then I guess 91 or 92 was my first year of going to Spring Break Nationals in Daytona Beach. And I did that for 3 years, and I never once got anywhere close to being on the stage. There was hundreds of cars. I was more in awe of the cars that were there and really not knowing that I was never going to do well, but it was just really cool to be there and experience it. I've been doing this since I was 16 years old, and I'm well into my 50s now. So that's a long time. Yeah, I stopped in 95, came back in 2009 when Mick Wallace came to my house with his BMW and said, "You need to listen to this, and this is what you need to build." And that was all it took. The horn car with the dual 5 1/4, I think, is what he had in the kicks. It was amazing. So
nice. Yeah, that's funny because when Mick and I first got to know each other, when I first came to it, I came in like 99 and then left in like 2003. So yeah, we just kind of interweaved back and forth there. So
yeah. I mean, 90, God, it must have been 1996 was Greenville finals.
Yeah, sounds right.
And I was living in Greenville, and I went to the finals there as a spectator. I literally lived like at the end of the street where the arena, the convention center was, or the hall where they had it. And that was the last finals I went to until 2010 was when I made it back to finals again. So it was a pretty big gap, 15 years between the last and the first. Yeah.
Chris and I went to that Greenville finals at the Palmetto Expo Center. That was a great show.
It was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like one of the great last huge, final shows that I remember.
Yeah, that's kind of when we fell in love with it,
Yeah. Yeah. It was a fun time.
Backing up a little bit to the Red River Shootout days, what was kind of your motivation for doing that, and the people you started working with and everything else? Like, because that really seems to be a lot of the foundation for everything going forward. It seemed to be just you kind of were able to rebrand that to have more approachability nationwide. But that's really, it seems to be the foundation. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I got to Texas, and there were no car shows, no car stereo shows. I mean, the biggest state in the country with a car audio shop like every 5 miles, especially in the Dallas area. Like there was one in every neighborhood, it felt like.
Yep.
And there was no competitions. And I reached out to a few people back in the Northeast. This was back in 2015. And everybody told me to reach out to Dan Ungaro from Soundscape.
Yep.
That he had put on shows for Mecca. And I said, okay. So I went in there and I talked to him and Dan Greenwood. I made my pitch. I did it. I basically did it the way I wanted to do, that way that we were doing things in the Northeast, which was open up your shop to me. It doesn't cost you a penny. I will provide all the trophies. All I need is a bathroom for the competitors and a place to judge in a parking lot. And the rest of it is on me. That's all I ask of you. And they didn't believe me at first.
Well, because they were paying for trophies and everything else. Yeah.
Oh, he had a storeroom. I don't know if you remember the storeroom in the back, the original Soundscape.
Yep.
And he had trophies that were unbuilt, piled up in the corner.
Yep.
And he's like, I am never doing this again. I'm like, I say, I'll even bring my own printer and I'll print up my own certificates. Like, I'll do it all. You don't have to do anything except for let me use your space.
It's funny how similar our pitches were at the same time, because I did almost the same thing. I'd be like, hey, you're not going to make anything off the show. You're not going to lose anything off the show.
Yeah.
Just make sure that we don't get kicked off the premises. I mean, I think one of the first ones I did up at Driven, up your way. Yeah, up your way right now.
Yeah.
Like the owner of the shop, he wasn't even there the first time I did a show there.
Yeah.
Like,
weird.
Yeah, Dan was elbows deep into the hood of a car most of the day.
Right.
Him and Pierce and Greenwood were building cars. Yeah. And I was in the parking lot out back.
Right.
Where the roll-up doors were, just kind of judging cars all day, and competitors were in and out all day, and it was great. We had we did shows at his place. I did a show out in Fort Worth. I did a show in like Irving area. But 2 of the 4 shows I did in Texas that year were with Dan at Soundscape. And then in Oklahoma City, I was friends with quite a few guys up there. Jason Owens, Todd Luliak, Adam Holland, Ben Harmon, all these guys were up there. And Jason was managing a shop that was also one of the distributors for Kicker. And he had a huge space. And he's like, dude, let's do them here. So, the Red River is the divider, the state line between Texas and Oklahoma.
Right.
And I was like, well, let's make it a points kind of thing, and there'll be an actual series. And I talked to Mo, and I was like, listen, can I kind of become your guy to try to revive Iasca in this area? Right. And he was like, please. Like, yes, please, please, please.
Uh-huh.
So I came up with the name of the Red River Shootout.
Yep.
Texas versus Oklahoma. It's the Red River Showdown is the football game that they have every year at the Texas State Fair between Texas and Oklahoma. So it just kind of all fell into place, and it was wildly successful. We were averaging like 18 cars a show, and I was doing 1 show a month. It was fantastic. We had guys driving up from Houston, guys driving down from, out from Tulsa, as far north as Stillwater, Oklahoma. A couple of guys came down. Mike Worst came down from Kansas. So, I mean, we had people driving a distance for these shows. And then we did it year 2. And we were about halfway through the year in 2016. And Robert and I kind of sat down and we were like, we really think that we're onto something. And we were part of a group of people that had talked about doing an organization that was different than Iasca Mecca and Mecca at the time, which had a lot of similarities to them. They were tonality based. They didn't put as much emphasis on staging and imaging and placement. It was part of it, but the bulk of the score sheet is tonality. And we understood that, but we just kind of felt like there was a place for something different for the harder part of the car audio. And that's we sat down at his kitchen table during Christmas break one year. I used to get the week off the business I worked for. We closed from 2 days before Christmas until January 3rd or 4th every year. And I went up to his house for a few days while my wife and kids were back east. And we wrote the entire scorebook, the entire rule book, we did the whole thing in like 4 days. And we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, this could work. And we presented it to a group of people and they were all like, yes. So we finished out the year as the Red River Shootout. We built a website. We took care of all the, the naming and all the business end of it, and then we rolled with it in 2017. So 2016, we kind of founded it and created it, rolled it out locally to a few people, and then went with it on a larger scale in 2017. I think we were at Aggieland, maybe. No, not Aggieland. We did a show in 2018 down in Houston, one of the big shows at what was the not Hi-Fi Guys. Rick, what's Rick's last name? The big guy. Drove the small Subaru. He used to wear it like a shoe.
Yeah.
He ran the audio department for them throughout Texas. So we did a really big show with him down in Houston under the MASQ title. Did the shows in Oklahoma under the MASQ title, did several shows in Dallas, and everybody really liked it. And we still, partnered up. I still did the Iasca thing with them with every show. And that was was also a way to bring more people in. Was, IASCA was a name that carried a lot of weight. Nobody knew who MASQ was. They knew who I was, but they didn't know what MASQ was. So IASCA brought him in. And for $20, you get a score sheet and a judge. Todd Luliak and Adam Holland judged for me a lot that year. They were a huge help in helping. Todd was a massive help in putting kind of the scoring metrics together with us. Jason Holland had a lot to do with the kind of what we originally called install, or Jason Owens had a lot to do with what we called install that really scared a lot of people. And that's why we changed it from install to safety. Yeah. It was 25 points of a 200-point score sheet, and people freaked out. So I was just like, guys, it's not install, it's a safety check. And they're like, well, then just call it that. So we changed the name 2 years ago from install to safety check because people were afraid to do install. But yeah, I mean, it just kind of, it lended itself to growth. When I moved back east in 2019, Robert kind of continued the whole southwestern U.S. I moved us to the Northeast, and I started to branch out back in my old neighborhoods, working with some shops. And then COVID happened, and it kind of put the squash on everything. But post-COVID, it's been huge for us. I mean, we're all over the country and everywhere in between now. In 3 years, we've really seen growth like I did not expect.
No, it's like I said, it's been phenomenal to watch because you didn't have a baseline, you didn't have anything to build off of other than what you had worked on yourself and the people around you. So, and I think you've been able to build a lot of good relationships in that and everything else. And I think it's like I said, it's been really cool to watch.
Thank you. Yeah, we've put a lot into it. Our biggest problem is finding judges at this point. We turn shows down because we just don't have judges, which I think is a problem for everybody. Correct. We're all pulling from the same pool of people. There's only so many of them. So.
Well, and MASQ has a different approach to where you can't just say, "Oh, take the score sheet instead."
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, especially like I ask a score sheet versus even the Mecha score sheet or like the money round score sheets or like the Star CA score sheets or whatever. They're all kind of a similar style. The points might be shoveled around a little bit in that, but it's still this dimension of it, this dimension of it, this dimension of it, and yours has a kind of a different approach.
It's been a learning curve for people. It still is, but I'm hoping that people are they start to kind of pay attention to the differences. We talk to a lot of people at finals. We talk to a lot of people at Aggieland. We try to help. Robert and I tell every person whose car we get out of, if you have a question, just ask. Our phone numbers are public. Our email address is very readily available. We both monitor the Facebook page. Everybody has both. I feel like I've never had so many Facebook friends in my entire life for people that I see 4 times a year. But, I get messages on a daily basis with people asking questions. And that's kind of the people who ask are the ones who do well with us or who kind of grow and are figuring it out because I don't want to say that they're interested in whether other people are not interested, but they're asking the questions of why. How do I get better? And why is this? And Robert and I kind of, we'll pull them in and we'll be like, let's talk. Let's grab your score sheet. We keep copies of all the score sheets. We've got them all, digital. And we'll pull up score sheets and go through them with people and be like, look, when this happens and this happens, then it's just a waterfall effect. And then they're like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's cascading.
You guys had a tremendous turnout for Aggieland. It looked like, I think your organization had probably the most competitors
we did.
Of any of them. It was really impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, we had 44, 46 competitors for Aggieland, something like that. It was a lot. Yeah. Robert and I were judging all day, Saturday and most of the day on Sunday.
It was a lot of work.
It was. And it was just the two of us. People ask us, can we do 2 judges per car? I'm like, do you want to pay for a second judge in each car?
Yeah.
Or do you want us to come in
4 to 6 judges? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we've always branded ourselves as I don't want to call it a value brand because we're not a value brand, but something affordable is what I'll say. We've always come in, we had to raise our price a little bit this year for our judges But it's always been hand a judge a $20 bill or a show host a $20 bill. And you get a score sheet and you take some information home with you.
Right.
And that's kind of, where other organizations charge a little bit more. We don't charge a membership fee. We're trying to make it very approachable for people who want to kind of put their feet, dip the toe in the competition water to not have to invest a lot in it. And that's been, I think, another reason why we've seen a lot of growth as of late is, it's just less expensive to do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you've added some new judges and stuff to your judging pool this year. Yeah. And you've had a couple of like online judges trainings and a few in-person ones. Do you plan to do more of those for this coming season?
Yeah. So Robert and I are we're actually going to do a judge training for all of our current judges. We're putting everything together right now. We actually spent a couple of hours each night this week rewording the rules with the updated score sheet. We've added some categories in the score sheet. We've moved some points around and redone a few things. So we've put all that together. We're going to put a kind of like a calling all judges Zoom call together for everybody. And we're going to do a Zoom call. And I don't want to call it a retraining, but a refresher for all of our current judges. In Alabama, we had all of our judges who were on site over to the house that we rented for kind of a preview of the score sheet. They got to listen to the new track list with the score sheet. We had a bit of a mini reference system, I'll call it. Todd brought his Riven reference system that he travels with out, and we listened on the Riven system. So he set up the 3 speakers in the dining room. They had like a buffet for us, or a buffet like cabinet in the dining room, and we set up a left seat, right seat kind of thing, measured distance from the front where you would be sitting kind of like a car almost, and played the tracks and got a really good feel for the width of the tracks and what they should be hearing. Took a lot of notes. I took a lot of notes included, so that as I'm writing my liner notes, which I'm finishing up now, things are a lot more detailed this year. There's a lot more in depth about like ambient width versus hard width on tracks, depth and placement and where you should hear things. Where in the past I had my home reference system, which isn't bad, but it's not the Riven setup where you get that kind of sense of space. I know that I now need to invest in a Riven for the house so that I can have the same thing going, forward to write my liner notes, because I got to tell you, like we would do AB with and without the Riven on, and then we would do 2-speaker versus 3-way, 3-speaker across the front, and it was just mind-boggling how different it was.
Yeah.
I mean, just watching the guys sit there and seeing their eyes light up and going, okay, now I get it. Like it was really, really cool. So we're going to try and set up a couple of in-person trainings, whether that's in Texas, where it's local for Robert. I know that Robert's talked to Jeremy about a possible training that he has coming up in January. We're going to try and get Todd to come down and do a judge training for us there or with us there. I'd like to do one somewhere on the East Coast, hopefully in the middle, like, I don't know, Knoxville, or there's a cool shop in Knoxville where I know somebody. Yeah, I know somebody in Knoxville who built some pretty cool cars and has built a couple for me. So I might hit those guys up. Oh, and one of the owners of the shop is our head judge. So Chris is officially our head judge now. So, get you guys involved in helping us with an actual like sit down reference judge training. And then, what you guys did with Scott last year and what Richard did with the training, if he's going to recreate something like that, we'll bring the reference system out for that as well and actually do a listening session and try and bring a few more judges on board. So,
that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, we even if you don't want to judge and you just kind of want to learn, we don't charge for it. So, come one, come all. It's about education. I mean, the reason that I started this was because I love car audio competition. I love, it's been such a huge part of my life for most of my life that I don't want to call it giving back, but I just feel like everybody needs a place to play. And the more people we have that are educated about what it is we do, the longer this is going to last and the more it's going to grow.
That's really a pretty cool and refreshing approach, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The what changes does MASQ have coming for this 2025 season?
Yeah, we I released the track list I guess a couple of weeks ago. I actually just looked and there's like 600 people following our track list. I don't know how that happened, but everybody's sharing it with their families or whatever and friends, and it's just absolutely gotten ridiculous. But the track list is out. We made some changes to it last second, but this is the final track. And then we changed some things on the score sheet where we added a few sections under the tonal presentation portion, where it's we added liveliness. We actually added a section for sub this year, where instead of sub, we added sub placement. Our tonal presentation would be, some of them were worth 3, some were worth 5. It's 5 points across the board. Our sound stage is now worth over half the score sheet when it comes to imaging, focus, and soundstage. Imaging placement, imaging, focus, and soundstage. It's now worth over 50% of the score sheet, where before it was almost like 50-50 split. Okay. We're worth about 110 points in just that section. So we changed the focus up, where it used to be 1 or 2 for left or right, but it's basically it is an either it is or is not in Robert's eyes and my eyes. So it's a 0 or a 1 category now. Okay. We added a sub placement category for this year, so where we did not have that before. We felt like people who were able to put that sub out in front of you should be rewarded for that. We added noise to the safety and basic installation area, where we did not have any deductions for noise in the past. We're actually going to have a noise deduction section. And we got rid of things like fit and finish, and one of the other ones, I can't remember what the second one was, but across the top, we took away 2 sections and then added the noise section for installation noise, system noise for things like that.
Okay.
We added liveliness and engagement. You know, engagement being, does it really pull you in? Is it an emotional experience? Does it give you goosebumps kind of thing? Or, you know, are you just like, you turn it on and you're ready to get out kind of thing? And I know that we've all experienced that once or twice. You know, you've got people who just don't know, and this is their first show, and like, okay, fine, it may be a 1, but how can we help you make it better? So that's all part of it. And then liveliness being, you know, are you experienced like the snap of a snare drum, the edginess of a horn, not necessarily attack, but like, is it a lively system? Does it have that, like, that rawness that, you know, instruments have? And we felt like that you really don't have that in any score sheet across any of the orgs that I can tell. And we really felt like, as somebody who is a huge fan of horns and played saxophone when I was a kid, I just kind of feel like people get to a bigger show and they like to play it safe.
Sure.
And we felt like we should be able to reward the people who are willing to recreate the actual sound of an instrument without making it, you know, wincing or painful, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
So I mean, we've changed up a few things. We've added a few things. We changed tonal balance to left-right balance for this year. One of the things, and this is Robert loves this, getting into a car, and when you do your left and right verification, or you could do your left, center, right, you know, the left side is,
you have no
nice.
Left mid bass.
Yeah, you have no left mid bass, and it's all right mid bass. Right. Or, you know, your left stage is playing at a normal level, and your right stage is yelling at you because you don't want to use time alignment. So so that's on the score sheet.
I noticed on the new score sheet was that left-right balance. I was like, I know why that's there.
Yeah, exactly. So and spectral balance just became an overall spectral balance, where before we had it as tonal balance, and it was confusing to people. So we kind of separated those 2 things and gave them their own categories. So a lot of it came from feedback from our judges. A lot of this came from feedback from competitors. None of this is really any of the improvements that we've made, any of the things that we've changed, classifications. You know, I say this a lot to people, and I feel like I'm a broken record, but like, I'm a competitor. I've been a competitor for a long time. I still would like to be a competitor at some point again. I'm working on getting a car that's competitive. I tried at Steel Valley. It didn't quite work, but that's okay. That's what notes and score sheets and feedback are for. And I want to build an organization, and Robert feels the same way, that's for competitors by competitors. And that means engagement from the people who compete with us. And so the feedback that we get from them oftentimes ends up on a score sheet or, in a class. We changed classes last year for 2023, moving into 2024 with the addition of a front sub going into a modified class instead of a pro class because nobody was in modified because everybody had subs up front. So these are things that came from installers and people who compete with us. And it's just give me information, give Robert information, tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, and let's talk about it and see how we can make it work for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
So for those who want to become a judge for your organization, mm-hmm. How does that process look like?
Call me, send me a message, call Robert, send him a message and say, hey guys, I'd love to help you judge. I live in XYZ area. And I'd even be willing to host shows. I have a relationship with this shop or this person or this place. And we'll set up a Zoom call. It's all done via Zoom. I'll send you a link. Robert and I have a PowerPoint presentation basically that we go through that includes the score sheet, track list, the liner notes, and we go through the whole thing with you. We try and get you to come to one of the bigger regional shows where one of us are, and you'll shadow us for a day if you've never been a judge before or if you're a newer competitor, so that we know that you understand what you're listening to. For guys like you and Chris and Cameron's and Joe and Brian Gill and Tim Smith, these guys, you guys have been around for a while. You've helped out judging. You understand sound. You understand how to tune a car. I don't need you to shadow me. I just need to make sure you understand how to score. Yeah. And I feel like if you go through our rules when it comes to the scoring rules, it's really, really specific on here's what I'm hearing. Here's the number it gets.
Okay.
And, so there really shouldn't be a question coming from a competitor unless they just don't want to read through all the documentation that it is or 18 pages that it is. And they have a specific question about something, then we'll explain it to them. But, why did I get a 4, not a 5 or a 2 and not a 3 kind of thing? It's right there in black and white on the website for you guys to see. And all the judges carry almost like a cheat sheet of sorts when they score in their clipboards so that they have something to refer back to as far as the numbers.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. It helps speed things along,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it makes it for more consistent. I don't know if anybody looked at the numbers, but so Robert and I did the same classes between finals and kickoff, and Cameron and Joe did the same classes for finals and kickoff. And we did that for a reason, so we could see if we were consistent between the two shows and between the judges. And we were, I think our biggest spread in points was maybe 12 points on a 200-point score sheet, and it was once or twice. The majority of them were within 3 points between the judges.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so, I mean, and it's not because we're so great at our jobs. I mean, I wish it was, but it's because we have the tools to make it that way. And we've really thought about, how do we keep this consistent? How do we make this as easy as possible for a judge to consistently give the right feedback and put the right number down on a score sheet and not have to question their decision?
Yeah, that's a great tool to help any judge, whether they're experienced or non-experienced, to be consistent within your organization against the other judges that are in there.
Yeah. And again, I think you guys said this on a podcast. I don't know if it was with Aaron or somebody else or it was Harry. From organization to organization, it would scare me if all the placements were the same. Yeah, it would be horrible if that's how it was. But as long as the best cars are consistent within the organization from kickoff to finals, that's, I think, more important for us.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll keep it focused on one area just so we can maybe dive into one spot because we both know that people don't read. So we'll just, we'll just start there. But I notice I have scored a lot of your score sheets, not yours personally, but MASQ score sheets, obviously. And so I've seen trends and everything else a lot. And honestly, I've never really dived into it, but I have noticed that there are very few times that anybody gets a bonus point at the bottom of the score sheet. What is a bonus point? How do you get it? And because I think I feel like this bonus points is something that people in car audio mostly associate with IASCA or like the X classes in EMMA and install, not really in sound. So, and I think even in install, there's enough, arguments over bonus points. And then you went through it on a sound quality score sheet too. So, I guess that maybe this will also get people to actually read the rule book. So, if you have questions on this further, go see their website. But, what's a bonus point? How do I get it?
So a bonus point was designed or is designed to give a judge the ability to give a competitor something extra that doesn't really have a place on the score sheet that really wowed them. Whether it was, I've seen a grown man get out of a competitor's car at a finals with a tear coming out of his eye because it was just that insanely realistic and lifelike. I think it was either you or Tom tried to steal Mike's car.
Tom
tried to steal Mike's car. Things like that where it's extraordinary.
Yep.
There is just something, I think, Mike, you called it your SQ towel.
Yeah.
For the car that needs the SQ towel, the judge that needs that SQ towel for a car, that's where you give a bonus point. Finals, I think I gave out a grand total of 3 or 4 competitors got bonus points from me. And it's not because there were cars that weren't good, because I had some of the highest scores that I've ever given to cars at finals this year. I mean, people really brought their A game to finals. But there were a few cars that just kind of really stood out as being extraordinary. And it's, do you want to drive it off? Do you want to look at them and go, I'm willing to dump my savings account into your bank account because I really want this car kind of thing. Yeah. And that's, and there really isn't a place on any score sheet for that.
Yeah.
But for somebody who puts in that work, for somebody who puts in, that effort and that time and really starts to understand and dive into our brand of sound quality, they should be rewarded for that with an extra couple of points. So that's what a bonus point's for. And it's subjective, but it's there.
Yeah, well, it all is.
Mm-hmm. True. It really is, yeah.
And my other question, which was really the only, prepared question in my head, and it probably has to do with it being tied to the fact that you don't really have a membership, but also, is there a place to see past results of events?
We post all the results for all of our large events on the website or on the Facebook page. So the website's been a work in progress. Robert and I both have really, really busy, demanding jobs that my job takes me all over the country.
Yep. What
seems like every other week. Robert's job has him buried in a laptop or a computer, writing computer code and computer programs for companies.
Yep.
So we really, by my own admission, we've kind of fallen behind on the website. It's something that we really need to focus on in the off season, so to speak. We need to add a place for events on it, and actually, as I guess our show coordinators or our judges or the people who are hosting shows, get them and send them into us. They need to go into the website so people can make use of the website.
Sure.
And we need to start uploading. We need to start demanding from our judges copies of all the score sheets,
right?
Via photocopy or pictures or whatever, so that we can upload those results for every show, not just the big shows, the money rounds and the regionals.
I was going to say, I can send you a lot of score sheets if you want.
Please, seriously, no. Scan them into a PDF file.
I've got them. Yeah, I've got them. They're ready.
Please do.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, Richard's good about it.
Yep.
Cassie's good about sending us pictures of all the score sheets. Angie's always been really good about getting us the information.
It sounds like you got it pretty well done. But and the only reason I guess I bring that up is that it does yourself kind of some disservice to a certain degree, because unless somebody, and I'm guilty of this too, because I have all my little secret spots that I put information, but but I'm really not trying to, I'm mostly just there for that one event and then I move on, with you having an actual organization now, it's doing the organization a bit of a disservice in the fact that you're a lot more successful than it looks. You know what I mean? There's a lot more going on than what it looks like if you're just going, if you're just like literally 3 minutes before we start recording, a guy from Mexico is like, where do I find, events for the USA? And I'm like, well,
actually, I put 2 events on our Facebook page today.
Yeah.
As actual events. SVR was finalized with the dates.
Right.
And I put Cassie's Quaker Steak and Lube show for, I believe it's in the beginning of the year next year for her. I still have to put the November 17th show because, it's only 2.5 weeks away.
But so why start now?
Well, I mean, it's been plastered everywhere. So I think it's just a formality at this point. I'm actually trying to make it down for that show. Cool. As a, just kind of show up, hang out, be support, whatever needs, maybe drop a car off, a new car for an installation, and go home in a rental car. I'm not quite sure yet, but you never know.
Right.
But yeah, it's something that Robert and I both need to focus on. We've talked about it. It's something that we understand we're missing. We just kind of have to figure out how to put the time into it to make it happen at this point.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And like I said, I mean, I didn't know if there was a reasoning behind it or if it was just, we're all busy. Obviously I've had
life.
I've had a coming soon SQology page for 8 years now, so I can't say anything. But yeah, no, it's cool. I was just I just wanted to throw that out there. That was
I appreciate the fact that I mean it's you're not wrong at all. I mean we know it's a problem. It's just something we have to figure out how to make the time for it, and life gets in the way often, and it happens. You're just like, oh, I've got to take somebody to a basketball practice, or I've got to take somebody to a doctor, and there's a million things every day that we have to do as people, and
right.
Something has to give every once in a while, and unfortunately family is first. So
for sure,
yeah,
always.
Oh yeah. So
on the score sheet, just because it is a different perspective and everything, I think it would, you said you have a presentation that you go through with the judges and everything else. But I think it would be cool if you had kind of some of that breakdown. I mean, I know you have the breakdown of the score sheet on the website and all that, but I mean, just some verbal talking it through as to where the emphasis is, how to understand the outcome of the score sheet. Especially, it's like at the bigger events, now, especially I'm trying, the reason for a lot of the swings I've made at the shows is to where I know I have the tools to be able to give detailed metrics back to the competitors to where they can really understand and dive into their score sheet and have all the information there to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that's more easily done with some score sheets than others, just from a basics. But like I said, kind of in the beginning, the MASQ score sheet really, I feel like lends itself better than any other when it comes to the the smaller events where you don't have those big event metrics to go on. You're having just to go on what the judge in front of you told, and this might be one of 3 events that you do, and you don't make it to a bigger show.
Right.
And that's where, again, I think the score sheet lends itself to that detail oriented, and it makes sense because of the background of the events that you've done, where you're accustomed to giving that level of feedback to people. And I know how you talk. I know how you like to deal with competitors and stuff. And I don't mean this a negative to, well, obviously I don't mean it a negative to my own event, but it is in that your approach to it isn't a process mill.
No, we're much more granular.
Yeah, because the invitationals, the SQology events, because I don't do any of the local events anymore. I only do the basically Aggieland, but the bigger events, and it's a machine. It just steamrolls. And if you're out of line, you're out of line. You're off the boat. It's like it's a steamroll, and you don't have that time to get granular and give that kind of feedback and everything else. But I think it would help if when you do have the bigger events like finals or SVR, everything else, like those types of events where MASQ is involved, I think it would help more people, because at the end of the day, like you said, you and Robert and whomever else is run ragged over the 2 days just to get through the cars.
Yeah.
And I know you don't get to talk to people like you want to.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to able to, if the customer or competitor were then able to better understand the score sheet, to be able to pick that apart on what this different level of scoring means and what their approach is, especially for newer competitors that aren't familiar with MASQ, I know it would help me, from an outside perspective. And I think, that would help a lot of competitors as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can go through, I've actually got the new score sheet sitting in front of me, hoping that we would get to do this from I guess like a 30,000 foot overview.
Yeah.
But so a lot of people ask us, as far as the installation and the safety, like ergonomics and how do they maximize ergonomics, and why am I only getting a 3 in ergonomics? I have everything OEM, it should be better than the 3. Well, no, I mean, OEM is exactly that. It's OEM. You didn't do anything extra, but you're not being deducted points for not doing anything extra. It's middle of the road.
Right.
If you come to us and you've got a device that's on an iPad or, a cell phone stand in front of me, or even next to me, mounted into a center console, where as a big guy, I've got to turn my body and look to see where I am and what track I'm looking at. Well, that's it's distracting. And then if I've got to figure out which of the 3 knobs that you've, just talked to me about, and I've got to remember which one is volume, which one is track, what button do I click, what do I do here, what do I do there? Again, distracting, because then I'm worried about messing something up, accidentally hitting a preset, doing something that could be detrimental to your system, because I definitely don't want that to happen. So then that's deductions of points. If you've got one knob and a device that are separate, and I've got to look someplace else, or it's not in a factory location where head unit would be, then you're probably going to get a 2. 3 is an OEM. 4 is an OEM plus. You've got an OEM head unit or something in an OEM location where you've then made a special remote where my hand is on the armrest, and as a lefty, I've got clipboard in my lap, pen in my left hand, and I've got a knob sitting right there at my armrest. Well, now you're getting some extra points, and that's a 4. And a 5 is I can look straight ahead. I've got a knob in my hand. I've got a heads-up display or something in the middle that's aftermarket, that's allowing me to see what's going on as far as track and volume and things like that. So think what Mark Eldridge had, where he had the head unit that was separated with the screen on one side and the volume and the track controls in another place. Chris Lewis did it in the Impala, where he actually took, I think it was a PRS 80, and he took the volume knob and mounted it to where the center armrest was, and then took the screen and mounted it where his gauge cluster was, so that everything was at hand and in front of you, and you weren't looking off to the side for something. That's a 5. Everything else in that section is pretty self-explanatory.
On the ergonomics, I just want to point out that, and very few people on Earth are going to get this reference, but Mo would be so proud of you.
Yeah, I know. Mo trained me when it came to Ayahuasca, so yes, I know.
I'm like, that sounds like one person's definition of ergonomics that I know very well.
And you want to know what's funny? Robert and I took the same class together from Mo. So
there you go. You're like, yep, this is the way.
Exactly. The Ayahuasca way is the way. Mo's way is correct.
Mo's Ayahuasca way. Let's be clear.
That's true. Mo's Ayahuasca way is the correct way. And I hope he hears this, and I hope he smiles when he hears me say, Mo, you were correct. So this is I guess an homage to Mo.
There you go.
Yeah. So yes, I understand your reference. Tonal balance is kind of where we set our tonal benchmark, I guess. We play full range pink noise for 2 reasons. One is to set volume on the car. Everybody's volume should be between 87 and 86 to 87 decibels is where we judge. Something that doesn't burn us out after listening to 20 cars in a day, but it's loud enough to be able to show a car's liveliness, dynamics, all the things that we look for in a vehicle from a tonal and a reference perspective. So we use it for that, and then we use it to listen for peaks and dips and suckouts and things like that. We're all pretty familiar with what pink noise should sound like in a well-balanced car, and when something's off, you know how to hear it. So it kind of gives you a benchmark of what you should be listening for when you get into music. When we do our pink sweep, the sweep is kind of interesting because that's where the left-right balance comes in. When we do that sweep, it should just kind of middle of the car, nice and even, nothing left, nothing right, just, where it's supposed to be, dead smack in the middle. And you'll have a car that will start up your left side, swing to the middle, come back left, go right at the high, and then come back to the middle. And we've all seen that and gone, I need to hear that again, because that's just crazy. So that's where your kind of overall spectral balance, all of those things, and it gives you an idea of where your tonal presentation is going to be also.
So slowing you down right there for a second, how much pushback did you get from using pink noise as part of a subjective evaluation? And where did that come from? Because I've obviously that's not something that I guess most of us might be used to.
It's again, it's what kind of makes us different. It's helpful, I think. When Robert and I first started doing this, we were looking for a way to figure out how do you set a level and how do you set a standard in a car.
Right.
And, full range pink noise for us, I mean, I don't know about you, but when you're doing your mic sweeps and your measurements in a car and you're looking for, you've got your mic set up, what are you listening to? You're listening to pink noise, right? Yep. So that's kind of where that reference came from, is we all listen to pink noise. We all know what it's supposed to sound like when it's right and what it does sound like when it's wrong. So this is a good way for all of us as judges to be able to, and as competitors, to be able to get an idea of where the car is going to fall tonally on the score sheet.
I got you. And I'm not personally being critical. I know
no. I mean,
there's going to be people that are going to want to ask that question, so I'm asking it for them. So I'm just
trust me, I've had a lot of pushback from close friends on it, and it's been a reason that a few people probably don't compete with us because they just don't agree with it, and that's fine. You can't make everybody happy all the time. So, but this for us is the right way to do it. So
I got you. Okay, continue.
Sorry. Yeah, imaging and placement. So right now we're using the EMA tracks for our placement and focus.
Yep.
But we're actually in the process of making our own tracks and actually creating a MASQ album.
Very cool.
So that it will be available on Amazon. Okay. I don't know about. I'm not quite sure. I know that it costs a lot of money to put something on iTunes.
Right.
Amazon does not.
Okay.
It's within our budget to be able to put an album onto Amazon. So, and because Amazon is what we use for our reference, we just kind of felt like this was the right way to do it.
Yeah.
We love what Emma has done with this, but we feel like we're in a position right now where we can do our own thing.
No, it's important. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're working right now on putting together our own left, center, right, and right with multiple instruments and vocal to give everybody that tonal, that placement. We don't do placement for left and right, because if your left and your right are not right and you don't know, then there's other issues you have that are much bigger.
Yeah, we don't really need to keep going here.
No, exactly. So
on those placement tracks, and this is probably something that you've already reviewed. Everything else, I will throw out a slight word of caution there as far as how they're actually done from just a instrument standpoint, and I'm saying this as a general interest piece, contrasting Emma versus IASCA. What you're doing, I don't care. But so obviously Emma had the tracks. I started using the 2014 disc Emma tracks as part of the SQology events and that. And then IASCA kind of took notice of that. And then when they were working on producing, the final IASCA quote unquote album that was put out, that was an actual CD. We went back and forth on it. And I was like, it'd be really cool to have this kind of, technical track on the IASCA disc. And so they did. And then, it was done. And I listened to it. I'm like, that's not it at all. The problem is that when the whole point of those tracks is to have the definition between the instruments, to know this instrument is here, this instrument is here, this instrument is here. And in the IASCA version of it, they just layered all the instruments on top of each other.
Yes.
And it's like, well, how am I supposed to point that out? Because there's no definition between the instruments. It's just a blur now, So that was I'm only saying that because I saw it go sideways once. And so I'm just throwing out there, just make sure there's definition between.
It's going to be a vertical line from top to bottom, from tweeter to mid base.
Right.
But everything should be in a specific space.
Agreed. Just making sure there's actual space, dead zone space between the instruments that are played, not just layered on top of each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we used Emma as the reference on how to do that.
Yeah.
So we liked the way they did it. It was done properly. That's kind of where the idea came from.
For sure.
And can we do this ourselves? We can. Okay, let's do it.
Well, if you put and I can guarantee you, if you put it on Amazon Music, everybody else is going to be using it too. So
that's fine.
I mean, but no, I'm saying, I think it's cool for you guys to be the leader in that and put that out there, because it's the only thing that's out there as far as, obviously there's lots of center, left, and right information, but left of center, right of center, the only thing that I know of that's publicly available is like peak noise stuff,
right.
which is fine. Going back to that, I think it could be used, but instruments is better.
It's, absolutely, because it gives you space.
Yep.
You get actual space, and it's not just a big blob right there where it's supposed to be. So
anyway,
so imaging placement is kind of where people start to fall apart. We do left of center, center, right of center, and then sub placement. And this is, it's a fairly sizable category. It's 16 points, but this is where the cascade happens, or where it starts. And when something is not in its proper place, there's generally a reason for it, and it usually is focus. There is something pulling, there is some smear, there is, a balance issue between left and right. So it's a number of different things, but here's where the score sheet where people get confused, and I don't understand why my score is so well. If you've got an issue with your placement, you're likely to have an issue with your focus in that same area. So if your left of center is pulling to the right, because your right mid-range is louder than your left mid-range because you're using that to help you with placement, then you're going to have a pull somewhere in your focus, which is a point deduction. And it just kind of goes from there. And then because of that, your width might be affected, or your realism, your spatial realism is going to be affected, or your transparency is going to be affected. So when you've got one problem in this first section of placement, or this first two sections of placement, there is probably 2 to 3 points lost in the next section, then probably 2 to 3 points lost in the section below that. And before you know it, that 1 point you lost in, focus adds up to being 5 points lost. And that's kind of where people need to read the rules and understand the rules. And if they don't, to reach out and say, can you explain this to me, why this has happened? I'm looking at my score sheet. I see I got a 3 out of 4 on center. I see that my center imaging was a 4, 4, and 4 down the board, but I ended up with a 145. And I don't understand why this is hurting, and this is hurting, and this is hurting, and this is hurting. And then we can go back and explain it to them based on the rules. So if the top two sections in placement and your imaging sections are where they're supposed to be, and they're tight and they're focused and everything is good, then you can pretty much rest assured you're going to be somewhere in the 160s, and you're going to be a top tier car. I mean, that's just that's the meat and potatoes of it.
Mike usually gets lost in the shuffle. Mike, do you have any questions to this point?
No,
sorry.
No.
Yeah, the quiet guy.
Yeah, I'm just listening because I've judged a MASQ show or two, and and so I'm just listening for like differences and changes that are new for the next season.
Yep. Our old score sheet was different. We did not have it set up this way, and I think that led to a lot of confusion for people.
Yeah.
Where now Robert and I have kind of taken a year's worth of feedback, a year plus, and we've said, okay, forget the changes in the wording that we want to make and the scoring things that we want to add and take out. We need to fix the order of the score sheet. That's the most important thing, is so that it makes sense to people, because it wasn't making sense to anybody because it wasn't in a cascading effect.
Yeah,
they didn't read it that way.
I noticed that as well. The order of it makes that make more sense. And I would say too, to the point of the cascading points, that itself, from a philosophy standpoint of this, is pretty much reverse of the way like Emma approaches it. And I'm only again using that as a contrast, just because in Emma the intent Doesn't always mean execution is correct, but the intent is more, hey, this is the one time we're judging your car for this thing. And I think that comes out, that intent of, the methodology on that comes out most clearly in like creative points for install, because you don't get creative points on anything that affects the sound. They're saying you already got that point there, so forget about it. Mm-hmm. And then when you get, when you start out with like your image placement, it's one of those things where, hey, if the voice is in the wrong spot, you got 0 points, you get nothing else. That's the,
right.
It's hammering you hard right there up front, but then everything else kind of, now height is a different criteria, and this is a different criteria, and so I'm not saying that either is right or wrong, and I'm not trying to say, I'm not trying to vouch for either one. I'm just saying that when the competitors are looking at this, if, for example, if you understand the Emma philosophy really well, and then you expect the MASQ score sheet to flow the same, right now, that's a very important point for you to understand of why it doesn't.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, you're exactly. So, and it's all well thought out, and the Emma score sheet it's considerably more points, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, we're all putting our emphasis, I feel like, in a little bit of a different position, but
absolutely,
we really we made our stand on imaging placement, imaging focus, and soundstage. Tonality is going to be what it is. A lot of us have the ability to either have somebody help us with the tonal part of a car or know how to do it well enough ourselves. But it takes, I want to call it like a real artist to be able to tune a car that's had the same equipment for a period of time, that can really like define space and define the imaging and the dead space in between images. And that's where like the cream rises to the top for us.
Yep.
We heard things in cars this week there at finals, both in the car and in our listening at the house that we rented, that we have not heard in a long time. And I don't know if it's people are really starting to figure out how to tune a car properly based on its limitations or its equipment or what it is. But there was a handful of cars that like were able to recreate that space. And that's, that's hard to do. But if we're all looking to recreate a space where music is being played, dead zones and natural space and in between is part of it. And we, that's where the focus comes in for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I'm just looking at the contrast between them so people can easier. I think it's easier to understand when you can say, hey, it's not like this. Right. And then you can be like, okay, well, it is alike. And then you can really kind of dive into it. And I fully appreciate the philosophy on your approach on it. I think it's a good one, because I mean, in a lot of ways, like staging itself is something that is kind of, well, it seems inherent to the system. And I used to think that a lot more until I did the tuner challenge. And then you A/B tunes in the same car, back to back like that from different people. I think that's really the only, there's very, very few times you get that opportunity to have, the best tuners in the world tuning a car and then being able to hear, flip a switch and within seconds hear the difference between those approaches. And it still boggles my mind how different the presentation is of those tunes, even though you're in the same car, Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So when we go from, now that you've got your imaging placement, your focus, now you're going to your sound stage.
Yeah.
And the stage itself is what we all, see in front of us, with depth, ambient, the spatial realism, all of it. Stage width for us, a 2, which sounds like a very low number, but when it's, a 2 is pretty much average, is pillar to pillar. Mm-hmm. If you're, right on the insides of the pillar, it's your windscreen, it's your movie theater screen, your television screen, however you want to refer to it. It's that pillar to pillar, top to bottom. That's your width. That's your 2. If you're inboard of your pillars, that's a 1. If you are on the outside of the pillars, but still within the confines of the car, you're at a 3. And that's really hard to do, especially when you've got drivers inside of those boundaries. There's very few cars that can do that. and really give you that width. And a 4 is with just like, there's only 1 or 2 cars I've ever heard that can really hit a 4, but now, I've heard it done before.
When you're saying as far as width goes, and I might be skipping ahead, so I'm sorry. You got the stage width and the ambient width.
Ambient width, yep.
So stage width, I would assume, is more
hard width,
using the technical tracks that are fully in phase. And
correct.
Hearing exactly where that lines up left or right. Then the ambient width is where you have a song that has more out of phase information. That's
correct.
Okay.
Your orchestral tracks. Your in the 2025, it's the Jaws track, the John Williams Jaws track. It has just unbelievable ambient width. And there's a couple of them. The Alice in Chains track does as well. It's got amazing right side ambient width, but the hard width itself is like pillar to pillar, like right outside of pillar to pillar on both of them. So hard width is your actual stage width. Ambient width is that out of phase. Am I getting outside the boundaries of the car? Because, I'm sure that there are a few cars that, you've got your wide bands mounted in your sails. You're going to get hard width on the outside of the pillars, and that's great. But ambient width is where we feel like get a lot more width, and that's where cars really bloom and they kind of expand and go out.
Right. And one more point here. Sorry, I would say if somebody is going, well, you're only getting 5 points for that, whatever. Okay, so here's the thing: if you actually think about it, like if you're going off an MASQ score sheet, I would say that the majority of everybody gets a 12 or a 13,
mm-hmm.
And then very rarely some of these cars, I don't know, I've ever seen a 15 for width on the MASQ score sheet, but because I'll just give a personal anecdote, but I think it tells the tale. My Neon had, mid-ranges, no tweeters in factory locations in the dash, which are inboard several inches.
Yep.
And it had, the width was to pillar. It was fine. My G35 had sail mounted speakers, somewhat off axis. And the width was just off the charts in that car. Yeah. And my Neon would consistently score 12 to 13, and the G35 would consistently score 13. So I gained maybe a point,
right?
Sometimes. So
depending upon the judge and where they were sitting.
So let's say that you've got that really good car with amazing width, and you gain 2 points here. That's probably twice as many points as you would be gaining on a different score sheet. So don't. I'm just throwing that out there that I think it's easy for people to think, well, I get 15 for width from my ASCA, but I get 4 points for width from you, and then you only give me 2. Like, yeah, but so are they.
Right. It's all in relation to the rest of the score sheet, also.
Right.
Exactly. So and how we value points. So
right.
Ambient width. So ambient width, that's width. Stage top is basically the horizon. Mm-hmm. One of the things we like to say is, I don't care if you turn your chair into a lazy boy, the horizon really doesn't change. So
right.
Whether you're reclining or you're sitting, there's a lot of people who used to do that, myself included in my Volvo. I'd lean that judge all the way down and be like, are you comfortable? Are you ready for a nap? Like, you're looking basically at the roof of my car.
To the moon.
Exactly, because, hey, I need that stage top to be way up there at the top. But no, it's the horizon is where it should be. So, we find the horizon line in the vehicle, and that's kind of where our stage top reference is. A lot of cars getting the 2 or 3 out of 3 points. If you're a little bit below the horizon, but you're not like at the top of the dash low, then it's a 2. If you're like sitting on the dash or below it, then it's a 1. And if you're just like, it's just a dead straight line across the horizon, then it's a 3.
Right.
It's pretty straightforward. And I think the definitions of that are pretty much the exact same wording. So
got it.
Stage height is and we do this a little bit differently. So stage height is a measure of how large the stage is from the bottom of the stage to the top of the stage. And there are a couple of cars that are a reference for this. And I have no problem telling people, Robert and I have, that Steve Blazer's head several years ago in Louisville boggled both of our minds, how it had life-size figures, playing instruments, standing in the engine compartment of his car.
Uh-huh.
Like, that is just awesome. The Civic can do it. It basically just comes down to how you have your stage set up. Like, how you have your car built. So a 5 is, basically from the floor to the ceiling, insane height, stage height, and everything is where it's supposed to be, and how everything is lifelike almost. There's your perfect score. Everything kind of goes down from there. Most cars are a 3 when it comes to that. From the dash top to the horizon is where most cars are. Maybe from the just below the dash top, which is not a problem for height, to the horizon or just above the horizon kind of thing. That's where you start getting into your 4s. And then when you get to these massive images, you've got your 5s.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how stage height is. Stability is pretty self-explanatory. Is your stage height stable? Does it rainbow? I listened to a lot of cars at finals that had some rainbowing issues, pulling down into the corners, specifically the passenger side corner when they were using amplitude instead of using time or phase,
right,
to get everything straight and placed. Well, when you start leveling up one side over the other, it's obviously going to rainbow into wherever that driver is. So your stage height takes a hit there. And then, not to skip ahead, but when your stage height takes a hit, then your transparency and your realism take a hit. So if your stage height is a stability is a 3 out of 4 or a 2 out of 4, then you can better believe that your transparency, your realism are both going to take a pretty big hit for that, because everything is screaming at you from the wrong place.
Yeah.
So, and that's how, again, our score sheet things relate to each other from the middle of the score sheet to the bottom of the score sheet. So if you've got a problem in one section, you're probably going to have a problem somewhere else further down the score sheet. Depth is done like everybody else's. If you've got a pretty one-dimensional soundstage that's sitting right at the front of your dashboard, you've got a 1. Very shallow is a 2. Going beyond, when you start getting outside of the front windshield and you're getting into that kind of cowl space where the windshield wipers are, you're getting into a 3. Beyond that, you're getting into the 4s and 5s. Spatial realism it's the relationship between what your image is doing and what your soundstage is doing. I think that, yeah. So, if your imaging is focused and your imaging is tight and your soundstage is nice and stable, then you're going to score well in this section. But if you've got a problem at the top where your imaging and your placement are, then your spatial realism obviously is going to take a hit. I mean, when your spatial realism takes a hit, again, transparency, dynamics, all these other things start to take hits. So, it's just, like I say, it's the cascading effect, the waterfall effect. Staging composure is the stage square. Or is it shifting out or in from corner to corner? But do you have a proper square stage going across the front, across the back? Are things placed within that stage properly? That's a 2. Most people are have a pretty tight stage where whether it's deep or shallow doesn't really matter at this point. Is it composed or is it wonky, left to right, right to left kind of thing?
Got it.
Stage front. Again, it's perceived physical location on the front of the stage. Image sizing is Jeff Smith one year got out of my car at Aggieland. I had a flood in the car the night before. It was the year I debuted the Scion with the dash. And he got out of my car and he looked at me and he said, "Howard, everything is exactly where it's supposed to be, but I've got little G.I. Joes running across your dash. little figures going across the dash." So, right. Image sizing is important. Do you have G.I. Joe singing across your dash, or is Godzilla there?
Right.
But there's no consistency between the two. So, again, larger in proportion is better, but they need to be in proportion to the stage itself. And that's kind of your sound stage, 100 and plus points, majority of our score sheet, 116 points, whatever it is, 106 points.
Got it.
So there's a diagram in there where the judges are supposed to mark where they're hearing the images, if they're smeared, where the horizon is. There's space there for notes, and there's space there for the judges to kind of show you what's going on. Yeah. I love to draw stages from the top so that people can see the horseshoes and the rainbows and all kinds of stuff. It drives them crazy, but more is better. So,
I get it.
And more is better. So, and then we get into the fun part, which is the tonal presentation of the car. And, attack, resolution, dynamics, ambiance, these are all things that everybody should be pretty familiar with. Transparency is something I don't know that anybody else is using transparency on a score sheet.
So what are you looking for there?
Transparency is, does the car disappear? Do the boundaries of the vehicle disappear? Can I look directly at a speaker and not hear a thing coming from it? Like if you've got stuff mounted in your sail panels and I'm staring at your sail panel, but the driver itself is playing left of center, that's transparency. The boundaries of the car and the locations of the drivers should just disappear around you. Right. That's where transparency is. Liveliness, again, am I tapping my toe? Am I bobbing my head? Am I really wanting to turn the volume knob up because I'm really like, this has got everything going for it. Like this is a lot of fun to listen to. I'm really like getting into it. Engagement. Am I making an emotional connection with the car? Is it getting all up in my feelings kind of thing?
Yeah.
Do I want to really get comfortable in the car and see if the key is in the vehicle or if the guy who owns the car with the push button start is standing outside it so that I can't drive it away. Like that's engagement.
Yeah.
And then tonal presentation is kind of the rest of it. It measures the overall tonal qualities of the system. And Robert and I were talking about this. The reference that I made was that very first car that I had, which had that 4x6 speaker sitting in the middle of the dash,
yeah,
and the AM radio.
Yeah.
Is that what you're presenting to me? And am I like dying to get out of this car?
Right.
Or is it like engaging with attack and realism and transparency and resolution? And it's just everything that I've ever wanted from a car from 20 to 20. And this is like it. This is my holy grail. And, from a tonal perspective. And then, your bonus point. So that's really it. The top of the score sheet affects the middle of the score sheet. The middle of the score sheet heavily affects the bottom of the score sheet. If you can get through the first 150 points, then the last 50 points should be a cakewalk kind of thing.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. Thanks.
I like it. Mike, do you have any input?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. The cascading effect that you were talking about, so if there's just one or two things wrong with the first portion, like stage focus or whatever,
mm-hmm.
you have it so defined out, basically you're going to find out what part of the focus is wrong, whether it's like drifting left to right or up and down or what have you,
Mm-hmm.
So that makes a lot of sense with your explanation.
Thank you. Yeah. I've read it a lot. I've judged it a lot. I've written it a lot. I've changed it a lot. Robert and I we've put countless hours into the score sheet and the rules. And we really believe, and I'm going to speak for Robert right now, we really, really believe that giving the competitor the ability to be able to very clearly understand what their number means is the most important thing that they can take away from a show with us. The second most important thing is the transparency that Robert and I have with them. And the third most important thing is the judge's ability to convey that information as well.
Yeah.
Because when we're transparent, then they know that they can always come to us with an issue. We've had competitors come to us with issues. We've spoken to our judges about them. We've worked on fixing the problems that we've had in the past to give people the best experience they can have. Again, our brand is not for everybody, but the people that it's for, I hope that they really enjoy it and they get something out of it. They understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have time to run through the music with us real quick?
Sure. Yeah. I've got all the time in the world, man.
I figure, I think especially with 25 season coming off the 24 season, I think this would be a really good opportunity to kind of put all together and have it
absolutely
for people who, like I said, like me, who can't read. So
the liner notes aren't released yet, but I can kind of give you guys an overview of what you're going to get.
Please.
So I pick the music every year. I start off, I have a library of music. I've got about 250 songs, and I continue to add things as I listen to other people's demo tracks, as I talk to people, as I hear things that I like. I like to hit the shuffle button on my Amazon Music on my hour plus commute home. And when I hear something I like, I kind of pop it into that library of songs, and then I can go back and listen to it when I get home. But we try and keep it fun. We try and keep it interesting. We try and keep it music that we like to listen to, and we hope that everybody else likes to listen to, but music that has some substance. So we start off this year, Teddy Swims. He's been everywhere. His voice is just amazing. Lose Control for me is, vocally, it's just kind of one of those tracks where even at like 87 decibels, a car can fall apart in that kind of lower mid-range frequency, especially when it starts to get a little bit busy. So it's a tonal track. Everything is kind of put in the middle on this track. There's not a whole lot of width to it. There's not a lot of depth to it. It's a center focused track that has the ability to make a car compress, I guess is the best way. And, cause a little bit of distortion in the mid range and mid bass and that transition. Just Breathe is Willie Nelson and his son Lucas. They're almost singing to each other left to right. The harmonica is positioned, I believe, just off of the right, but not quite right center, where Lucas is singing. The guitar is just below Willie's vocal, which is just above the horizon, on the just left of center, but not quite left center. And their voices, while very similar, are both very distinct. And there should be a separation of space between their vocals. So that's a good one for space. Jaws, you could probably do about half of the track, half of the score sheet with Jaws. It's width, it's ambient width, it's depth, it's layering, it's transparency, it's dynamics. Like, it is everything from the tonal presentation and the staging presentation. That whole bottom of the score sheet, this track embodies everything we're looking for out of the score sheet. It's a really well-recorded track. It's a lot of fun to listen to. There's some great transients in it. It's a really, really good track. Darktown Strutter's Ball with Alberta Hunter, her voice is just haunting. It's more about her vocal, that kind of mid-range transition that she has. It's just that lower end of the female mid-range where the piano and her voice are just, they're just awesome. Somewhere Over the Rainbow, it's Jewel. It's a fun track to listen to. It gives you some left of center, right of center information. So you've got that kind of left of center, right of center information with instrumentation, space in between the instruments, and her vocal in the middle. Down in a Hole, which is the Allison Trains track from the MTV Live, I forget what they call Unplugged, the Unplugged track. That thing gets so far out wide to the right at the very beginning with the guitar playing, and then all the other instruments and the vocals come in. And you guys remember the Hell Freezes Over track where all the guitar players and everybody was sitting across the line with Hotel California?
Oh, yeah.
It has a lot of that same kind of feel to it, but it's a little bit busier and there's fewer people. So you've got a little bit more space from left to right, but you've got some really good width from like right at the left pillar all the way out beyond the pillar on the right-hand side. So the stage feels like it's almost shifted, focused more towards the right, but there is defined spaces in between everybody. How Deep Is Your Love? I heard this track and I fell in love with it. Against the wishes of some other people, I included this because they felt like it just didn't really have a place, but it's a live recording on a live track. You get a sense of space out of it. The backup vocals are behind you. There's some space in between instrumentation. There's a little bit of reverb from the room and some echo effects from the room. So it gives you some pretty good spatial realism. The Pot, Brass Against is one of my favorite bands ever. In fact, they just released their North American tour. I'm going to see them in December. They're going to be in Baltimore. They're playing in a club. I saw them 4 years ago for my birthday, in a place called the 8x10. And they had 8 horn players standing on a stage that was 12 feet wide, shoulder to shoulder. I forget the lady's name, the singer. She was standing basically on the edge of the front of the stage. The guitar player was standing off stage because there was nowhere for him to stand. And the drummer was basically, his back was against the wall. The stage was so small. And it was the most amazing show. The dynamics, their horns are so well recorded.
Yep.
I love this track. It kind of comes in and out. The baritone sax is just very prominent, left of center. They're a lot of fun. Again, this is like engagement. This is a lot of things, but it's a horn heavy track. And I feel like between that and September from Earth, Wind and Fire, you're going to get a lot of that kind of toe tapping. Is your head bobbing kind of thing?
Well, the great thing with Brass Against, like I used their Killing in the Name of cover a lot back in the day for demos and stuff, because it was something that people recognized, but it was a lot better. It obviously brought a lot more depth out of the system when you're listening to it. And yeah, it's great because it's one of the few times that me personally, I can listen to brass and not wince when it's actually, done right. I feel like maybe they tame things a little bit more than usual on the mastering side, but yeah, I really, really enjoy listening to it, even just as background music.
It's awesome. Like I always have something of theirs in my rotation.
Yeah.
And they just released a new track this week. They did Back in Black, I think. AC/DC cover they just released this week, so it's awesome. Nice. Overnight from Zach Brown, his vocals are amazing. It's a great track for male vocals and kind of left center, right center, center. There's just a lot of depth to it. It's just a really fun track. Ice Ice Baby is just one of those things where I heard it and I was like, you know what, my 80s is coming out, but I couldn't put Vanilla Ice, so here's the old man in me, and here's a fun track, because you got to have something that's just odd and has no purpose in judging other than to, if I'm really enjoying the car, I'm going to probably play this in the car and just kind of listen to the guys, listen to Marty Ray's voice and just enjoy myself. And then Queen Mary, people have always complained there's not enough sub. Well, we listened, and we used to do SPL. Red River Shootout had SPL in it. Our first couple of years, we did SPL, but people were just like, nobody really cared about it. And then we took it away, and everybody was like, dude, where's all the sub? So we're giving you back your sub with Queen Mary. But Queen Mary is actually pretty interesting because it starts off with a lot of left-right information going back and forth across using phase. And it starts off on the right side, and you've got this clicking, ticking noise going back and forth. And then when that sub kicks in, man, it's just violent. It will rattle your teeth. It'll make your eyeballs shake at volume, and it is deep. I think I measured it down to about 26 hertz. So full extension has got a lot of depth to it. And there's your sub. So we've got 2 spaces on the score sheet for sub. One is placement. And then another reason that we kind of picked this track, and a lot of people are putting subs up front and using subs in the rear.
Right.
If your sub is not tight, that thing is going to go from the front and it's just going to yank back to the rear of the car, and your sub placement is going to get killed. So as somebody who runs a front and rear sub in his competition car, it's one of those things that, you have to be prepared for.
Right.
A lot of people use the sub to kind of help boost mid bass as well. Yeah.
Right.
That's where we hear a lot of that kind of mid bass pull down to the right side, because their subs that front sub is just, it's either there's some tactile feeling coming from it, or it's just a little bit too hot. And in the mid bass transition, it's just pulling everything down. So you've got your sub level for tonal presentation. You've got your sub placement as far as imaging placement. If that sub pulls to the rear, you're going to have other issues. So, or if that sub is too hot and it's going to pull to the rear, then your sub placement is going to be affected. So again, another space where, one track's going to affect multiple spaces within the score sheet. So, and that's the music. So that's, very quick rundown. Again, the liner notes themselves are going to come out here in the next week or two. I'm almost done writing them, and then I send them off to a few different people to verify on other home systems and in cars, just to make sure what I'm hearing, they're hearing, and nothing needs to be changed. So I figured in the next few weeks it'll be out. Hopefully by Thanksgiving we'll have it out and to the public for the year. So,
well, we talk a lot about things that might need some homework here. So there will be URLs in the show notes of this podcast that you can follow to pull up the score sheet that we're talking about, and also pull up the music tracks. So that way you can go explore that on your own. And be able to use this as a reference as you go if you prefer to learn that way. And I think, the way you kind of went through it and some of the conversation around that, I think it's helped me immensely to understand. I've read the rules, I've gone through it, everything else, and I'm pretty accustomed to how rules are written. But yeah, I mean, it's been had this conversation with you has probably helped me more than anything else before. So I appreciate that, and I hope it does the same for others. So
absolutely. So, we've got a lot coming up for the year, which is good. Show schedule's filling out. We're involved in a lot of things this year. We've got we've got HVR coming up in June. We have SVR coming up in July. May we've got the Kicker show.
That's phenomenal. When you guys posted that, I was cheering you from the sidelines on that one. That looks awesome, and I'm really proud of you guys for going out and doing that, because I mean, there's not. Let's face it. None of the orgs are really pushing their own event. Back in the day, we had, IASCA had Spring Break Nationals. Mecca obviously had, like the Vinny and this and that. Like now, most of the orgs, it's finals and that's it. Yeah. And then it kind of relies on everybody else to get the job done. But you guys doing that with Kicker and getting that done, congratulations. That's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I know a few people that work there. I tried to do it when I was in Texas and just could never make it happen.
Right.
And I made a couple of phone calls. Sent a couple of text messages out to friends who work at Kicker, and I was like, would you guys be interested in doing something? Because I've got a great idea. And the phone rang immediately. And they were like, this is the right, like you caught me on the right day. And it just snowballed. And within, I guess, about a week, Steve Irby was like, let's go. He approved the whole thing. He's like, I love it. This is perfect. Let's do it.
So what are you guys doing?
It's a top 20, and we have limited it to 20. It's a prize round, so top 10 will take home prizes. The 11 through 20 will take home an award. We've got sponsors from, Excess Power is sponsoring the show. Karma is a sponsor. Ribbon is the title sponsor. Mike and Chris and Sound Factory is a sponsor. And we have just all kinds of people who've Resonix is a prize round sponsor. And it's not money. It is prizes.
Right.
So we're doing prizes. We're going to limit the amount of cars from MASQ to 30 cars because it is a one-day May 17th show for the first year. We are in talks with Museway. I am in talks with Arc Audio. I'm trying to get manufacturers to come out and set up a tent and bring a demo vehicle and show their wares off.
Yeah.
And I'm asking $500.
Right.
I've talked to Chris for MTI to bring some demo cars out. So I've got my hands out. I've contacted Richard over at Sony. I've reached out to Dan Greenwood at Alpine.
Yep.
I've reached out to Nick over at Stereo Integrity. I haven't heard back from him, and I'm not surprised. He's really hard to get in touch with, but
right.
And I don't know Nick, so it's kind of hard for me to relate to him. So I'm going to start leaning on some people who I know who know him to see if we can get him out there. I think it would be great publicity for him. But yeah, it's starting to build some momentum and it's starting to grow. We're going to do a unmasked live with them to kind of go through the whole format.
Right.
And yeah, so I as a competitor who's been around since the 90s.
Unmasked.
Exactly. That's exactly what it's going to be. No, you're right. As somebody who's been around and done this back in the heyday, my favorite part about going to Spring Break Nationals was not competing on Saturday in one of the lower classes, but it was walking around the dealer arena and the manufacturer arena on Sunday.
Yep.
And I would love for these guys their biggest expense is going to be sending a car and their product out to set up a table. Bring a 10 by 10, bring a 10 by 20. I don't care what size tent you bring and how many tables you bring and how much product you bring. Just come.
Yep.
Like, please, there's the ability to revive this. I tried for years to get a MASQ show with Knowledge Fest, and they were not interested. They wanted no part of a karate competition. So I figure this is the next best way to do it.
Regardless of who you are as a brand, right. Like I would say, first of all, in sound quality, for the most part, Kicker is not a competitive brand to you. So you use their base and what they have there as something to help leverage, bringing something in for yourself, because, there's going to be somebody for everybody there potentially.
Mm-hmm. And he has invited everybody. He doesn't care who it is. His competitors, people who are not his competitors, he does not care. He just wants to see this as successful as we do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And he's a good dude.
Yeah. He is. He's awesome. The museum is going to be open for everybody with demo cars in it, playing for people to listen to.
Very
the
cool.
wall of sound, the
Yep.
The wall of sound is going to be up and running. My buddy Ernie, who does marketing for them and social media marketing for them, and the guy behind the kicker on MASQ for them, said that he will have some cars out there that will melt your face off during judging breaks. So while we're taking breaks, he's going to open up some of these insane builds to play for people if they want to sit in and have their faces melted off, as he likes to say. So it's going to be a great show. It's going to be a great day. We're already looking at 2026 and turning it into a 2-day event.
Nice.
So yeah, we're going to have food trucks out there. So there will be food for everybody. We're looking at bringing in a small local car audio, our cars, like custom car, whether it's, the mall crawler trucks or somebody that, some of the guys that the kicker team knows, to bring some cars out just to kind of fill the parking lot. But it's a big parking lot. There's a ton of space. And I would just be tickled if we could bring people out and just kind of, show the country that, sound quality is not dead, because it's not, especially from a manufacturing standpoint. It's there.
Right.
The niche is there. We just, come on out. So that's my pitch.
It's very cool.
That's it. Yeah.
And yeah, I've done the tour of the facility there and everything, and it's definitely worth being there and just doing it, even if you just have an excuse to show up for the show and have an excuse for them to have their house open to you and check it out. Because I mean, regardless of who you are or what you've done, if you haven't been there, I mean, it's cool. It's cool to walk through, regardless.
It's an amazing facility. What they've done.
It really is.
So.
It really is.
Yeah.
I know. There's nothing finalized or anything like that as far as finals go. But do you have any yourself as far as just your thought process between now again if anybody here, you're obviously the baby as far as the finals events and stuff like that. I mean, is there anything that you've learned to this point in these first 3 years that you plan on executing next year?
Yeah. We're going to bring out, I think Robert and I need to kind of step away from judging at finals and kind of become more administrative. We are, the reason I think it takes Robert and I so much longer to judge than it does Cameron and Joe, or it did this year, was because we were constantly being pulled in directions to help people with things, to find somebody to do something. So, we talked about it, and we'll probably bring a couple of extra judges next year, and he and I will be visible, walking around behind the desk, available for people to ask questions.
Nice.
And to get verified on things, and which we were not. So that's part of the learning experience. I'd love for us to, be able to bring a second set, do 2 judges per car.
Yeah.
But 2 judges per car is very expensive. And, we don't have the machine behind us. I mean, as much as I would love to, as much as I try to play, and we do get in the ring with, Emma, which is a global organization, and IASCA, which is a global organization, and they do SPL, and everybody does, they all do so much more than we do. I can't afford to bring in and pay 6 judges and house 6 judges and travel 6 judges, because I don't have 6 judges that are close anywhere to be able to do it. So
and I was going to say, and on top of that, making sure you have trained and used judges over the past year that are relevant, ready to go.
Exactly.
That's all very difficult at your stage.
It is. Game. It is. So we're going to continue with doing, 1 judge for this year. And depending upon, how big it gets and how much bigger finals gets, then, we'll play 2026 by year. But 2026 is going to be our 10th anniversary officially, since we,
very cool.
Chartered in 2016. So we're going to treat it as our 10th anniversary year, but we need to get through this year first. So
yeah.
We're going to do regionals this year. Colorado is going to have a regional points chase with a regional points champion. We're looking at doing one for Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, where Robert does his shows. where there'll be a regional kind of points chase, and there'll be a points champion for that region. We're going to look at doing one in the Ohio Valley with Joseph, and then we'll do one in the Northeast with me. So, we're trying to, I guess, bring more awareness, obviously, give people more reason to come out, hand out more trophies and more prizes to people, and just be more visible and help it grow.
I think those regional events are the future, as far as what really rejuvenate, it's like finals and shows like SVR and Aggieland or whatever. I mean, it's why my mantra is what it is as far as building it for the people who are there, but also it's really for the people who are already involved. It's not really, those kinds of events aren't great at growing it necessarily.
Yeah.
You have people that come in and get demos and stuff like that. And obviously, I think that's where the focus should be on those. But as far as people participating and competing themselves, the regional events are really where it's at. And I think you're dead on the right track for that.
I mean, the way Luke's stuff has gone in New England, the way HVR went this past year with 20 plus competitors.
Yep.
These are the shows where I think, and doing one in Knoxville for the Southeastern US as well. It's just, again, I don't want to say they're untapped markets because they aren't, but they are spaces where people who can't get to finals but want something finals like, and that's what we're going to try and bring to them. So
perfect
points chases with a final show at the end of the year kind of thing. And,
right.
We hope that we can give them that experience this year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's a good idea.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So that's it.
Is that all? That's it?
That's all. Just 2 hours. So.
Right. You had me freaking out there for a second. I was like, is it really 10 years? And I looked back and I was like, yeah. 10 years. Holy crap.
It's been over 10 years technically with the Red River Shootout, but MASQ itself is 10 years.
Right.
Yeah. It's crazy, right?
Goes by so fast.
It does. It really does. That golden headphones, man. That logo where everybody was like, what in the hell are you doing? So, well, I mean,
give us something to talk about, right?
Exactly. That's cool.
Mike, any follow-up, Mike?
No. We look forward to partner with you guys on some of these shows to help do our part and furthering sound quality and everything that you guys do.
We greatly appreciate what you and Chris do, and everybody who hosts shows for us. But you guys have been there like since day one, pretty much. So I've been to Knoxville several times where we've just had cars flowing off the side and in the back, and it's been awesome. It's been great. I love it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you, gentlemen, and we'll talk soon.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Thank you.